History had just been rewritten, and the tennis world could barely believe what it had witnessed. The roar that echoed across the courts in Washington refused to fade because what unfolded was far bigger than a single championship trophy. It was the moment an unstoppable young talent forced the entire sport to stop, stare, and admit that a new era had arrived. Alex Eala did not simply claim a title, she shattered expectations, dismantled doubt, and left even the greatest champions searching for words. And then, when the celebrations were still echoing around the world, Rafael Nadal finally broke his silence. The message was not loud. It did not need to be. Sometimes the quietest words from the greatest legends carry the weight of an entire generation. Coming from the man whose fighting spirit inspired millions, whose career became the definition of resilience, the praise landed like thunder across the tennis community. Fans who had followed Alex's remarkable journey from the Rafa Nadal Academy suddenly felt that every sacrifice, every lonely practice session, every impossible dream had led to this single breathtaking moment. It was no longer just a promising young player chasing greatness. It was one of the greatest champions in tennis history recognizing that greatness had already begun to reveal itself. Inquirer Sports +1 Nobody could say this story appeared overnight. Long before the cameras captured the celebration in Washington, long before the trophy was lifted into the air, there was a determined young girl carrying enormous dreams from the Philippines. She entered a sport dominated by countries with generations of tradition, endless resources, and countless champions. Every step forward demanded more courage than anyone watching from home could truly understand. Many believed the path was simply too steep. Many believed the mountain was too high. Many believed the established stars would always stand in the way. But belief has never won tennis matches. Heart has. Discipline has. Relentless determination has. That determination eventually carried Alex to Spain, where she trained inside an academy created by one of the fiercest competitors the sport has ever known. Every court carried the spirit of hard work, every practice demanded excellence. Every drill rewarded resilience instead of excuses. There, surrounded by ambitious players from around the globe, Alex slowly transformed from a talented junior into a fearless professional who refused to be intimidated by famous names or glittering reputations. The academy could teach technique. It could sharpen movement, it could strengthen the mind. But nobody could manufacture the burning desire that already lived inside Alex Eala. That belonged entirely to her. Tournament after tournament, challenge after challenge, she continued collecting experience against stronger opponents. Some victories brought celebration. Some defeats delivered painful lessons, yet every setback quietly became another brick in the foundation of a future nobody could fully imagine. Then came the tournament that would change everything. The atmosphere around the DC Open carried enormous pressure. Established champions arrived expecting another successful week. Top seeds prepared to defend their status. Commentators focused on familiar names that had dominated the headlines for years. Few expected the loudest story to belong to the fearless young Filipino. One victory became another. One upset became another headline. Every round seemed to raise the difficulty another level, yet somehow Alex responded with even greater composure. Her movement became sharper. Her left-handed patterns became more dangerous. Her confidence spread through every rally until opponents found themselves questioning shots they would normally strike without hesitation. Each match added another layer to the growing belief that something extraordinary was unfolding. The crowd sensed it, the commentators sensed it. Even rival camps began whispering about the remarkable momentum building on the opposite side of the draw. Still, one final obstacle remained: Jessica Pegula, one of the strongest competitors on the tour. A player respected for consistency, intelligence, and remarkable fighting spirit. Standing between Alex and history, the championship match refused to follow an easy script. Momentum shifted, pressure mounted, every game carried enormous significance. Pegula demonstrated exactly why she had earned her reputation, forcing Alex to solve problems under the brightest spotlight imaginable. The opening stretched along to the experienced favorite. Many young players would have watched confidence disappear. Many would have allowed frustration to grow. Alex did the opposite. She became calmer. She trusted her preparation. She trusted every exhausting training session that had shaped her resilience. As the battle continued, something remarkable happened. The rallies became longer. The movement became freer. The confidence became unmistakable. Every forehand exploded with purpose. Every backhand carried conviction. Every point one added another crack to the emotional wall standing across the net. When play resumed after weather interruptions, Alex looked transformed into an unstoppable force. The hesitation had vanished completely. She attacked with fearless intent, forcing Pegula deeper and deeper into defensive positions until the balance of the entire championship shifted forever. The deciding stretch became a breathtaking display of confidence, composure, and relentless aggression that stunned everyone watching. Reuters +1 The scoreboard told one story, the emotions told another. A young woman from the Philippines had climbed the highest mountain of her career. A nation watching thousands of miles away erupted with overwhelming pride. Children who had never imagined themselves holding a tennis racket suddenly saw a future that looked possible. Families gathered around television celebrated as though every point belonged to them. This was no longer only Alex's victory, it belonged to an entire country. Across social media, reactions exploded within minutes. Current players offered congratulations. Former champions celebrated the breakthrough. Broadcasters replayed the decisive moments again and again, searching for words powerful enough to capture the significance of what everyone had just witnessed. Then came the message many people had quietly hoped would arrive. Rafael Nadal finally spoke. For years, tennis fans had associated Alex with the academy carrying his name. They knew she had learned inside an environment shaped by his philosophy of humility, discipline, courage, and relentless effort. Now the founder himself publicly celebrated her achievement, describing her triumph as richly deserved and recognizing the magnitude of the historic accomplishment. Those simple words immediately traveled across the tennis world because they represented far more than congratulations. They represented validation from one of the greatest competitors ever to hold a racket. Inquirer Sports +1 Imagine what that moment must have felt like. A player who once arrived as a hopeful teenager. Years of sacrifices, countless practices, endless physical conditioning, moments of doubt hidden from cameras. Then suddenly hearing praise from Rafael Nadal himself. No trophy alone could equal the emotional power of that recognition. Fans immediately connected the dots. The values Nadal embodied throughout his legendary career had become visible inside Alex's fearless performances. She refused to surrender difficult rallies. She competed with passion instead of panic. She fought for every point regardless of the score. She respected opponents without fearing them. Those qualities had become impossible to ignore. Even seasoned analysts admitted this breakthrough felt different from an ordinary surprise champion. They spoke about maturity beyond her years. They admired the mental toughness shown under crushing pressure. They highlighted the fearless shot-making that continued even when the championship stood within touching distance. Perhaps the most inspiring part was not the trophy itself. It was the message the victory delivered. Dreams born far away from traditional tennis powerhouses could still reshape the sport. Talent combined with relentless work could overcome history. Belief could silence expectations. One fearless competitor could inspire millions. And somewhere amid the celebrations, while cameras captured smiling faces and flashing lights, reflected from the championship trophy, another realization quietly settled over the tennis world. This story was not reaching its ending, it was only revealing its unforgettable beginning. The celebration in Washington slowly settled into history, yet the echoes refused to disappear. Every interview, every headline, every conversation inside locker rooms seemed to return to the same astonishing question. Had the tennis world just witnessed the arrival of its next global sensation? For Alex Eala, there was no time to become overwhelmed by the noise. Champions understand that yesterday's applause cannot win tomorrow's match. Even while millions celebrated, she remained the same disciplined competitor whose greatest weapon had never been a single forehand or a brilliant passing shot. It had always been her mindset. That mindset had carried her through moments when victory seemed impossibly distant. It had carried her through injuries, exhausting travel, lonely hotel rooms, and practice sessions that stretched long after spectators had gone home. It had carried her through every whisper that insisted someone from her background could never truly challenge the established giants of professional tennis. Now those whispers had vanished. The silence belonged to the doubters. The applause belonged to Alex. Inside training centers around the world, coaches began replaying clips from her remarkable run. They pointed toward her fearless court positioning. They highlighted her willingness to attack instead of retreat under pressure. They admired how quickly she transformed defense into offense, refusing to let powerful opponents dictate the rhythm of the match. Young players watched with wide eyes. Many had spent years believing they needed overwhelming physical strength to compete with the elite. Alex demonstrated something equally valuable: courage. The courage to trust aggressive decisions. The courage to swing freely on the biggest points. The courage to believe that reputation means nothing once the first ball crosses the net. That lesson spread far beyond Washington. Across the Philippines, tennis clubs reported renewed excitement. Coaches spoke about children arriving at practice carrying dreams that suddenly felt tangible. Parents who had once viewed tennis as an unreachable ambition now looked at the sport with fresh hope. One remarkable tournament had accomplished something statistics could never fully measure. It had created belief. The images became unforgettable, children waving Philippine flags, families cheering together long after midnight because of the time difference, former athletes from other sports offering heartfelt congratulations, public figures celebrating not only a championship but the arrival of a national sporting milestone. The victory belonged to tennis, but the inspiration belonged to everyone. Meanwhile, experienced professionals understood another reality. Winning a breakthrough title is difficult. Proving it was not a miracle is even harder. The entire tour would now study Alex more carefully than ever before. Opponents would analyze her serve. They would search for weaknesses in extended rallies. They would examine every tactical pattern that helped carry her toward the championship. Nothing would come easily anymore. That is exactly why Rafael Nadal's recognition carried such extraordinary importance. Throughout his legendary career, Nadal never built success upon temporary confidence. His greatness came from relentless improvement. Every season demanded new solutions, every rival forced new adjustments. Every championship required fresh sacrifices. Those closest to the academy understood that philosophy better than anyone: celebrate, recover, improve, repeat. It was never about protecting success. It was always about earning it again. That mentality now surrounded Alex as expectations climbed higher with every passing day. Television analysts immediately began discussing future tournaments. Could she challenge consistently at the biggest events? Could she break into the very highest rankings? Could she become a genuine contender at the Grand Slams? The questions multiplied because the possibilities suddenly seemed limitless. Yet perhaps the most fascinating reaction came from her rivals. Professional athletes rarely admit surprise openly. Their competitive pride rarely allows it, but body language tells stories words cannot hide. Several opponents who had previously viewed Alex as another promising young player suddenly recognized something different. They recognized conviction, the kind of conviction that changes careers. Because once an athlete discovers exactly how it feels to defeat the very best under crushing pressure, fear begins disappearing forever. Confidence becomes memory instead of imagination. Alex no longer had to wonder whether she belonged among the elite. She had already proven it. That invisible transformation often separates good players from future champions. As highlights from the final continued appearing across sports broadcasts, commentators repeatedly paused at key moments. They replayed the fearless winner struck on critical points. They admired the calm expression between rallies. They praised the emotional control displayed during momentum swings. Again and again, one theme returned: composure, not youthful excitement, not reckless aggression. Composure, the kind normally associated with experienced champions who have spent years lifting major trophies. That maturity became impossible to ignore. Even when pressure threatened to overwhelm the occasion, Alex refused to rush. She breathed, she focused. She trusted the work that had brought her there. Those simple habits often decide the difference between heartbreak and history. For Rafael Nadal, those qualities were never accidental. Throughout his career, he repeatedly emphasized respect for preparation over shortcuts, discipline over distractions, and humility over celebration. Seeing those same principles reflected in one of the Academy's brightest graduates made his public praise resonate far beyond a congratulatory message. It became a symbol of continuity, showing that the values shaping one generation of champions co-inspire the next. Sports.inquirer.net fans embraced that connection immediately. Photographs from earlier years resurfaced. Training sessions, practice courts, smiles shared between mentor and student. The contrast felt almost unbelievable. A hopeful teenager learning inside one of the world's most respected academies. Now champion receiving recognition from the very legend whose standards helped shape her journey. Stories like that cannot be manufactured. They must be lived. Perhaps that explains why the emotion surrounding this victory felt so genuine. Nothing appeared handed to Alex. Nothing appeared easy. Everything looked earned. Every drop of sweat, every difficult decision, every heartbreaking loss that quietly strengthened her resolve. By the time she finally stood holding the championship trophy, millions understood they were not simply celebrating a remarkable performance. They were celebrating perseverance. The journey itself had become as inspiring as the destination. And somewhere beyond the flashing cameras, beyond the roaring crowds, beyond the endless headlines celebrating a historic breakthrough, another challenge was already waiting. The next tournament, the next opportunity, the next test against another world-class opponent eager to stop the remarkable rise before it grew even greater. But something fundamental had changed forever. The tennis world would never introduce Alex Eala as a hopeful prospect again. She had become a proven champion. A dangerous opponent, a player capable of changing the outcome of any tournament she entered. Every draw would now feel different. Every rival would prepare differently. Every crowd would watch more closely. Because history has a remarkable habit of announcing itself quietly before revealing its full power. Perhaps Washington was not the final destination everyone would remember. Perhaps it was only the first unforgettable chapter in a story still preparing its greatest surprises. The next time Alex Eala walks onto one of the sport's grandest stages, she will not arrive carrying only potential. She will arrive carrying belief. The belief of an academy, the belief of a nation, the belief of millions who watched one extraordinary week transform possibility into reality. And somewhere, watching with the same competitive fire that defined his own unforgettable career, Rafael Nadal will surely understand better than anyone else that the most dangerous champion is not the one who has already reached the top. It is the one who has only just discovered how high she can truly climb.